So it makes okay. Is this
There we go.
all right? It says recording. I don't know why I wasn't saying that before. I hit the button. Maybe not. And as the intro once again fades out, we are back with another special episode of the My Opinion Doesn't Matter podcast. I have with me a special guest doing it in a little different way. Still got COVID. People still got lives and distances to travel. Not always easy to get everybody in the studio, but we're happy to be joined by my good friend Justin Main over Zoom, everyone's favorite new platform since March of 2020. And, but hey, man, we're happy to have you on board. And I'm a quick little disclaimer. We actually had to redo this damn thing because my dumbass did not hit the record button. So we talked for like a good 5-10 minutes. He was well deep into his whole main story that he's here for, and we had to redo the whole thing. That's just me being honest. That's just me being honest with you guys.
Hey, no worries. It's part of the game, right?
But 100%. But we're definitely going to have to retell the first story about how we originally met. But we'll get to that in just a second. I'll go over a little bit. I'm a little bit of background for those who don't know Justin. A lot of people around this area would probably at least recognize your name. You've acted in a bunch of short films. You've acted in some feature films. You've even been in some other bigger projects. We'll go into that as well. I know you got a bunch of stories, but you also do physical training, which he was my physical trainer for a little bit there. And then was something that also kind of surprised me, that just a man of many hats. You're also an amateur wrestler, or maybe a professional,
Professional, yes.
Professional wrestler. It is professional. You're at, which is awesome. I've never known anyone that actually has, besides obviously like if you're a collegiate wrestler, that's different, but professional wrestling, a little bit more of a show, less of a, we're just going to go on a mat and hug each other for a little bit, a little more exciting,
Well,
when it comes to stuff.
There are times where you have to get,
oh, sure.
You do more of your amateur style wrestling, but I would definitely say it's a little bit more showy, a little bit more flashy.
Yeah, I like the showy stuff. I'm obviously I'm an entertainment guy. Showy stuff is what I like. So I always like seeing the little clips that you'll post on I'm on Facebook every now and again. I know a lot of it has been able to happen since COVID started, but before COVID, right, there was a lot of really cool videos he had out there. We'll definitely have to get into that a little more first. But first, got to tell the story about how we met, because it is a funny one. We were on the set of one of my buddy's films. Actually, the set was my house. We were at my house, which almost makes it stranger. We didn't mention that in the first scene, but actually makes the story a little bit stranger before you hear the details. I met this guy. The first time I met him was in my bathroom, in a bath towel and a leash.
Next time, you knock before you open up a random door party.
Come here, big boy.
I'm coming.
That's the first time that is how we bonded.
So, just to establish, I am an ultra serious actor. I take my craft very seriously.
We are professionals here, ladies and gentlemen. We're professionals. That's why we only stopped this video once and didn't hit the record button only one time. Professionals, one time is allowed. That's it, though. But you were basically playing the part of, look, we've all been at high school parties. Things go down in the bedrooms, the doors closed, just don't walk in there. That's pretty much the main rule. Usually there's a sock or there's something on the door, like, don't enter. My drunk character decided, you know what, let me just go waltz on into this room where my good friend here was, what in your imagination can be used, because it never shows what you were doing in the bedroom, just you body slamming me into the bathroom next door to the bedroom in a towel with a leash, no shirt, and basically pissed because I entered the room at clearly the inopportune time. Clearly that was not the room I was supposed to enter.
I mean,
I was
naturally, you
I
got to
was
knock
messing with
before
the
you enter,
magic.
right?
And you certainly let me have it. It was like I was supposed to act scared because this. I mean, you may not be able to tell on the screen, but like I said, he obviously is a wrestler. He's a professional. He's a personal trainer. Guy's got a few muscles on him, a little bit. He's got a little bit of a size and stature to him, a little bit.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Just a little bit.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Just rips off his shirt. I have no clue what you're. Oh man! And so I'm supposed to act.
idea what you're talking about. Oh, my
just,
nose itches.
Go over there real quick for me. That'd be really great, So I was supposed to act scared of this guy, and it's the first 3 or 4 times I busted out laughing because it was just so. A complete stranger, and just trying to be serious while he's got his hands on my neck. Which this is sounding worse and worse the more I explain the story. Has his hands on my neck, just basically telling me if I go in that room again, I might be next. Is basically what he said. But we can't remember the exact dialogue. It's been a few years at this point, and the film never got released, so you're not even going to be able to find it anywhere. Which is, thank God for that too. But
right. But it's going to surface once I.
Oh
if
yeah,
I
once
make it to
you get famous,
big
that's
time
when it's
movie,
going to come out. We joked about that on set too. Like, this is going to be what gets me fucked up in 10, 20 years when I'm on the Jay Leno show and I'm talking to Oprah and like, we actually found this.
Jimmy Fallon is going to be pulling this fucking clip out right as soon as that happens. I'll be like,
you're going to be like you get the biggest role of your life or the biggest project you've ever directed. You're making, all this money, getting all these awards. And then they're like, hey, we have a question about this. This is back in your heyday as way back in Michigan. Can you just explain what the hell is going on over here? And you're just,
that's how it works.
They found
that's
it.
How it always works. That's how it always works. You see it happen to everybody. It's gonna happen.
Man, it's gonna happen at some point. At least I wasn't in the towel. I was fully clothed. But from that point, we obviously at that point we bonded to a point where we had to stay in contact. So we wound up staying in contact. I do a few professional training sessions with him, and from there he then started doing this. What started off as a little project that then turned into a much bigger project. And it's something that I want him to explain fully. So I'll let him get into it. But it is certainly an exciting time for you, my friend.
Yeah. So I'm currently very, very hard at work, myself and my team, on a film that is inspired and based off of the Crow comics and movie franchise. If your audience isn't very familiar, it's basically a story about a man and a woman, or just loved ones in general, that unfortunately face a very tragic or untimely ending. Usually by a group of people who are just bad people, just terrible people. And in the story, there's a mythological figure that is associated with the crow that if there is a moment or a tragedy that is bad enough, it warrants the crow to bring one of those spirits back from the dead to basically set the wrong things right, to get revenge on the people that caused that tragedy. And then basically it's pretty much a killing spree from there. So if you were to classify it in like genre-wise, it'd be kind of like horror, maybe sci-fi, a little bit of fantasy. It's comic book based. So the original comic book series was created by a man named James O'Barr, and then it was adapted into a feature film franchise. The first one starring the late Brandon Lee. And if you look it up any further, you'll kind of see what happened there.
You'll hear the whole story about Brandon Lee.
Yeah.
I think most people probably know of the story, but just maybe not remembered exactly what movie it was. They just know that they know what happened to him, like that's right. And obviously that brought it to a whole nother point of cult classic type of movies, right? Because of not only was it actually good, but it had a very tragic sort of backstory to the production of it as well, which just kind of grew the notoriety at that point.
Right. It was basically a starring vehicle for Brandon Lee, and unfortunately during production there was a stunt that went really bad, and unfortunately he passed away during production. And it sucks because I mean you see interviews, you read things about Brandon Lee, and you realize like how great of a person he was, just offset and behind the scenes. So for him to face a tragedy like that, it's terrible. And this was going to be, like, if you watch the film, it was really just a very high quality, grade A, like just a great film that could have really launched his career, just to like higher heights. And it's such a shame. But but myself and my team, basically me, I'm a huge fan of The Crow. Like I've always been a huge fan of the series, of the comics, and there hasn't really been anything made, I would say, at least since 2006. That was the last time a Crow film came out. There's been starts and stops over the past 10, 15 years or so. There's been remakes that were rumored to star Jason Momoa, Bradley Cooper, Luke Evans, Tom Hiddleston. Like it was always stop and go with these remakes.
Tom
but
Hiddleston
nothing
would be good.
Yeah,
That'd be fun.
it was very stop and go with all these remakes, and just nothing materialized. So me being a fan and me, being an actor, I was thinking, well, can I do this? Can I make a film? Can I can I do something here? Like,
I think all actors ask themselves at one point or another, like, could I do that too? Like, I think I can do that.
Right. Obviously it would be a fan film. Like I don't have the official rights or anything, but it's been my dream since the first time I ever watched the movie was when I was 12. So I started thinking of like all these stories, all these different things that you could do with this franchise, with this mythology. There's so many different directions that you can go in, so many different stories you can tell. And I had one when I was 12 years old that I still carried with me to even right before we started production on Crow, before I made the decision to put something out there. So I think it was September 2019, I just sat down with a couple of close filmmaker friends of mine and told them what I had going on, and we came to the decision to make it and to make a short film based off of the franchise, and to put something out there, something completely unique, that we're not remaking. We're not using any other characters that have been in the franchise. We're making a completely original story with completely original characters.
So this is not a remake of The Crow.
No,
This is a complete.
Not at all.
Okay.
Not
I was
at all.
wondering about that too. That was gonna be my next question.
Yeah, I wouldn't even call it a sequel, really. It's more of
it's just the Crow in the Crow universe, but
it's in the universe. It's completely unrelated to anything.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it is related in mythology,
sure,
reasons, but it's not like a sequel or a remake or anything. It's basically taking that Crow story and just really running with it and seeing how far we can go with it. And
is
that's
it based
what
off any of the
this.
comics that you mentioned before? No, okay, so it's a completely thought of story then.
There's inspirational point, like we took inspiration from things here and there, but it's not, none of the story itself is not from any of the comics that have been released or any of the films that have been released as well. It's a completely original story that it just pays tribute and pays respect to the franchise that has come before us.
Awesome. Okay. Okay, cool. Now when it comes to the characters, how difficult was it to not kind of create similar replicas to other characters from the comics and the movie in the new characters that you created? Like, was it difficult to find like, oh shoot, like that kind of sounds like very similar to this character, we got to make it more unique? Like, were you worried about that so much? Like, was that a challenging point when you were creating the story? Characters that fans would like, considering they had other characters that they were already used to.
So I would say it was never a big concern for the team and I. I think we actually honestly wanted to go more in the direction of figuring out how we can keep the main character, Dean, in this film, separate from the rest of the other characters that have ran with the franchise. How can we make this character different from them? How can we really just do something that hasn't been done before? So it wasn't so much how we can keep him similar to the leads that have come before us, but how can we make Dean kind of I don't want to say in his own group, but just stand on his own as a character. So a lot of that was just really deep diving into his backstory, looking at how other performances were played, and then trying to do something a little bit different. Dean, I would consider him to be more. I would say he's more soft spoken. He's more rough around the edges. He's more down to earth. He's kind of like your blue collar type of guy. He's not a man of a lot of words. He's not very quippy.
Okay.
He when he speaks, you listen. He's that type of guy. He's not the kind of guy that speaks all the time, but when he does,
Pay attention.
there's you pay attention. There's a point
Okay.
that he's trying to make.
I'll keep that in mind when I watch the movie.
But the thing with Dean is that he and this is what we play with in the film. Dean is a very black and white type of guy. You have your black, you have your white, and then you have your shades of gray, right? This film and everything that happens in it, the decisions that are made are all in shades of gray. It's a very shades of gray type of film. There's no bad guy, there's no good guy. There are just good and bad decisions. And with Dean, he views the world differently than how we play the rest of this film. He's a very black and white guy. You either did something good or you did something bad. There's no in between, really. So we play with that mindset throughout the course of this film. And from the beginning of the film to the end of the film, you see this arc that he takes mentally that leads him into a different situation than where he was at the beginning of the film. And it was really fun to play that because it really helped us build the story and craft the story in the direction that we wanted to go with.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about the production of the film, because I know you filmed some of it before COVID, some of it you filmed during COVID. Talk about, I guess, your own personal challenges, especially for someone who isn't, necessarily, certainly no disrespect, but when you're making a movie like in Hollywood, you have all these Hollywood backers. A little bit easier to get something off the ground when you have millions of dollars to throw at somebody. I'm assuming that's probably not the budget that you guys had.
Absolutely not. I wish we had that budget, man. That would have been really nice.
So what were some of the challenges with being an indie film, a fan film, and having to not only, get, know when the right time to get filming back on track was, but also, convincing everybody else like, hey, like this is, we can be safe while doing this,
right.
We still have work to do.
So originally we were supposed to start shooting in April 2020. Okay. I remember our first original shoot date was supposed to be April 17th. And obviously COVID became a thing in March.
Yes.
And we were still locking down locations in March. We were still locking down specific crew positions. And it was almost kind of like a wait and see kind of approach, because I think COVID really started getting like really bad in like late March, early April. Yeah. So as it got closer to the dates, we started realizing this is not going to happen. There's no way, because Michigan was under quarantine at the time.
Yeah.
So
complete shutdown. No planes were even in the air. Like there was nothing.
Film crews weren't even allowed like in the area at all. Like Detroit was under complete lockdown. Like you could not film. Nobody. Yeah. Doesn't matter what permit you had or what your budget was. Nobody could film in Detroit. So, and trust me, I looked into it. So it was a tricky situation. And unfortunately, but fortunately, we had to push back to late May. Our first shoot date ended up being, I think, May 30th. And it was just literally 2 days outside of the quarantine being lifted. So had the quarantine not been lifted, we probably would have had to push back again.
Okay.
But we were the first production in Michigan to go back at it, and probably one of the first in the country to go back into, at least one of the first independent productions to go back into actually shooting something physically on location that wasn't remote. So I'd be hard pressed if I said that it wasn't a big learning experience, and definitely something that was, I don't want to say really tricky to do, because once we got our footing, it became a smooth process. But trying to figure out the right way of going about taking care of these processes and making sure that people stick to them. I mean, people are people; they're going to do whatever they want. So with something as brand new as COVID, and with all these precautions that we're supposed to take on set, there's only so much you can do. It's not like it's common practice at this point. So It's almost like a trial and error. You can give everybody these rules and these instructions, but I mean, it isn't
to choose to follow them.
it isn't the standard, it isn't the norm. So you get, again, if you can only do so much. Thankfully, with our set, a lot of people were very respectful towards that. We didn't have really any issues. We had certainly nobody tested positive for COVID, so that was great. We did our due diligence in making sure that everybody was safe before they went to the set and after set. We did a lot of questionnaires were kind of like our big thing, just making sure that everybody's answering honestly. We would send out like 2 questionnaires a week just to see basically what everybody was doing. We would test on site before anybody even entered set. Masks and gloves were required at the time, no matter what, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So obviously some people would pull down their mask, and it'd be one of those things where if we catch them, tell them to pull it up. If we don't, I mean, there's not much you can do. But even went as far as like the crafty table. Everything was individually wrapped. There are no platters. There's no trays.
Okay.
Dinners and lunches and stuff like that were all either individually boxed, or we had somebody handing it out to people.
Yeah.
So it was, 6 foot distances, all that stuff, trying to set up everything outside if we could. So we did everything at that time of what we know we needed to do. We did everything we possibly could.
What we knew.
We did, right. So we did color groups. Only certain people were allowed near certain people. There's only maybe like 2 or 3 positions that could go around to every group. But like, for example, like the makeup artists and the hairstylists and the actors would all be in one group because they work hand in hand with each other. Camera, grip, gaff, all in one group. Director, I think only the director, production assistant, and maybe a COVID compliance officer were the only 3 people that were allowed to go universally to every group. But we would do stuff like that. And I mean, again, it's a trial and error process. You see what works and you see what doesn't. But I think we did, for what we knew at the time, I think we did really well. I think we did our best to keep everybody safe. Again, nobody tested positive at all. Nobody got sick. There's no sickness on set. And there were times on set where we had upwards of like 50 people. So it was definitely it was a definite huge learning experience, but I'm glad we had it because I think it kind of set the precedent for the rest of the productions going on in Michigan. I know we set a pretty good standard with what we did.
Awesome. That's good to hear. Now you mentioned that other groups are all separated. What exactly what was your position when it came to the film itself? Because I know it's like it's your project, it's your baby, but you weren't the director of the film. So what is your role within the film? If it's just one, it might be multiple.
Right. So I executive produced the film, and I starred as Dean in the film.
Okay.
I did not by any means want to direct at all. Like, I do want to direct something at some point, but to wear that hat, especially with everything that was going on, and then on top of that to star in it, and then on top of that to executive produce it, it just would have been too much. And then on top of that, like, I know directors that are far better than what I could have done, and I'm glad that we got Matt Zekel on board, who was he's so good. He's so good, and I can't wait for people to see what he can do. Like, when he's given the opportunity to like really just throw everything into it, man. Oh, he's so good. He's without spoiling anything. Like, you'll see what he's capable of doing. Like, we are of firm belief that this film will change the mindset of what Michigan filmmaking can be. We are a firm mindset, and I'm very, very positive about it. I'm very, very proud of the work that not only myself and Matt, but the entire crew and cast put into this. Nobody slacked. Everybody put their heart and their soul and their passion into this. Because I think we all walked into this with like a chip on our shoulders. We all wanted to prove a point and show that we can be damn fucking good if given the opportunity to have something with substance to do. And I think we did just that. I think we really have just a fantastic film on our hands that will help inspire other filmmakers to do the same.
Awesome. Yeah, I know in my experience when it comes to Michigan filmmaking, I know I've tried to make a couple of my own projects. I've tried to, I mean, really the biggest project that I've been able to get going that's come off the ground is this podcast. Especially, right before COVID when I was able to get it started, because I wouldn't have started it during COVID just because it wouldn't have made any sense. We did a few episodes in COVID. Obviously all of it, even with Melissa, was all virtual. She lived literally like in the same apartment complex as I did at the time. We still get everything over the phone. Like I used to like hold the phone up to the microphone because I didn't know how to. So I just,
I like
and
it.
it worked. No one knew. No one could, like, because it wasn't filmed. So I just held it up to the microphone for the entire hour. I'd put the microphone down and just kind of leave it there and just let it,
Wow.
just let it record the phone call. And no one ever noticed. It didn't sound any different. It
Wow.
sounded just fine. I'm like, it just, and we did a few episodes that way, and then obviously eventually we kind of stopped for season 1, and then now we're back for this one. But I remember thinking, when am I going to be able to get back into a normal film project again? Like the last film project I had done, besides the one that I'm currently in, it had to have been probably Jacob's last film. So I don't think it was the one that I was talking with you about. I think there was another one that he had done after that I had worked with them on, but that was the last one I had done. So it had already been kind of a long time. And then, I got kind of caught up in, working and everything. And then the quarantine hit, and I was just kind of left thinking like, damn, like I really haven't been able to do any projects. And so being able to get to the one that I'm in right now, it's also, even as we're, I guess you could say, we're not quite, hopefully we're kind of coming over that hill of the whole pandemic. That's the hope that we all have, that we're starting to go down. Even in that aspect, it's challenging for us as it is. Like I'm the assistant director. I'm one of the producers. I'm the I was telling you this before, how my jobs have been changing every other day with this project. I am the casting director, the recruitment director for all of the crew. I do a lot of shit, and it's been interesting, even just trying to navigate just getting people into rehearsals with COVID questions. Like people would ask for auditions. Hey, what are your guys' COVID protocols? And I went, oh, that's right. We have to, that's a whole other, subsection of worries and anxieties that you have to have. And it's been really interesting. I wouldn't say fun, but it's been really interesting to just trying to find new and creative ways to navigate around all of that. Obviously now as the vaccine comes out at this time, whenever anyone sees this episode, this is around the time where the vaccine's really starting to get out to people. Who knows what it's going to look like in 2-3 months when we're still shooting or when we're still working on it. It might not be so bad then, but just that statement alone, not really knowing how the next month would be, let alone the next 6 to 8 months that you can plan out a whole film schedule. We didn't know. No one had a clue what next week was going to bring in March of last year. Like people didn't know if the grocery stores were going to close. Everyone was buying toilet paper. No one knew what the hell was going on.
It was very week by week too, like until like
for some people day by day
extended longer. Yeah. So it's just last year especially, it's just hard to plan for anything. Like I still feel fortunate and lucky that we were able to put together the film the way we did, because honestly, even pushing it back, it made the world of a difference for us, because we got I had to have been like
2 months, roughly
another like a month and a half, 2 months almost, where we could just plan things out and make sure we had all of our ducks in a row before we went up. And that wasn't even just with COVID, that was with like just making sure all of our locations were set and all that stuff. So in hindsight, like it worked out big time for us, because it made the film a much better film because of it. So I think the longer this goes on, I think at this point in time right now, we're starting to really just get like the confidence back in terms of filmmaking and being able to do things in not only a safe way, but an efficient way, regardless. So I think it'll get easier from here on out. I don't expect it, or yeah, I really don't expect it to get any more difficult filming wise.
I'm definitely, you know, I'm knocking on wood right there with you. I definitely think that that's I believe that that's on the path that we're on, and I think that's just going to make it more and more exciting. Like I tried to get a short film that I've been trying to make for a couple of years off the ground in the summer. But unfortunately with the bars, I the whole thing is filmed in a bar. It's like maybe 10 minutes, but there wasn't a single bar or restaurant that was even remotely willing to let any film crew in at that time. Most of them weren't even open, or they were just starting to open, so they were
Oh
like,
yeah,
we're not trying to do anything to get us, you know, out or anything, you know. So hope, you know, like, you know, seeing some of that stuff kind of come back, you know, seeing some of my friends
right.
being able to come back into filmmaking, obviously me being able to do this web series that wouldn't have been possible before. The director of this series, before he even thought about this, he was creating a screenplay. He had all the sponsors set up, he had venues, he had everything was starting to get going, and then COVID hit. And so because of
Mm,
that, he basically scrapped it and then created this web series in quarantine, to just waiting to be able to be created until finally we were able to start doing something with it, you know. So you know, like even stuff like that, like this, a lot of that's one of the most fascinating things about COVID when it relates to the entertainment industry is there's so much entertainment that never would have been thought of if it wasn't for the pandemic. You know, even
mhm.
like with stuff like, you know, with all the virtual calling and all the virtual meetings and shit, there's a lot of shows that have been able to get certain guests on their shows that they never would have had a chance to because they live in Australia, or they live overseas, or they just live, you know, they don't necessarily have, you know, the time to fly out to California, even if they live in, you know, in the United States, because they're
Mhm.
busy, but they can, you know, block out an hour of a time at their computer when they're just sitting at home anyway, or 30 minutes or 20 minutes, you know, like
Right.
it's a lot easier to do stuff like that. And I think now, like, I think some of this stuff is gonna be here to stay, because a lot of it, people are realizing there is a convenience to it, you know. And
Mhm.
then but even just some of the stuff, like, you know, like, you know, I know people make the joke about Ellen when like, you know, in her stand where these giant like iPads with all of her audience's faces on, and people thought that looked really, really creepy. But just stuff like that, or you know, all the cutouts in the sports stadiums for all the playoff games, so you could feel like you were
Yeah.
in the stands, like just little stuff like that that we never would have gotten a chance to see. It's been really interesting just to see how people who are, you know, make much more money and are much smarter than me, create different things to be like, hey, the show's got to go on, you know, like the show, like,
Mhm.
you know, for a little bit there the show stopped, but then eventually we're like, hey guys, you know, the old saying, the show must go on eventually. And they slowly started bringing things back, you know. And it was even with like concerts, you know, like people doing like the live stream concerts, which I thought of in the very beginning. I'm like, why doesn't an artist just be like, hey, you know, I'm gonna do a live stream, $5 to get in, and you can sit there, you can watch the whole time. Like if you're someone like Jay-Z or Beyonce, or you're someone like who's got a major platform that could stand by itself, you could probably get, I'd say, 100,000 people, maybe 50,000 people. But even at $5 a pop, you're looking at, you know, $250,000. And hey, you know, for an artist that maybe isn't a Jay-Z or a Beyonce, say you're, you know, a band that just makes the majority of their money from touring, I thought that could have been a really, really cool idea. You know, and maybe not every
Right.
band is able to be able to do a platform like that, and maybe the technology just wasn't as big enough for that at the time. But now stuff like that is happening, and I just like that. I like to see all these different things, like even like the Instagram versus battles. I don't know if you had a chance to see any of those, where they'll get
I
like,
haven't,
you
no.
know, a lot of times it's like two, whether it be OG hip hop, you know, artists, or just artists that, you know, like even a couple of them like had like beefs with each other, who like, you know, like, you know, years ago, and then now they're basically, you know, whether they're virtual in their own rooms or they're in the same room, and they're just basically listing off, or they're singing some of their best songs, and it's like a battle, you know, but it's all for fun, you
Hmm.
know, it's all, you know, and it's all live, so you're getting comments and votes coming in throughout, you know, the whole live stream. Like they just had one with Jeezy and with someone else, I can't remember who it was, but they had like an old beat that they like squashed, and like, you know, at the end of the live stream, like it was just stuff like that never would have happened, because they could have just gotten a venue and charged people $120, $150 for his, you know,
Right.
for a seat, if not more, and just made it a concert. And for a lot of people, that's not going to bring him, you know, to that, you know. So being able to do something like that on Instagram, you know, I just like seeing how art has been able to evolve. I wouldn't say change, but just evolve, even in times that are not exactly ideal, you know.
Oh, that's been art, throughout the course of mankind, though. Like, yeah, I mean, obviously, there's been plagues and
Oh, of course.
stuff that has, is always affected human history. But the one thing that's constantly changed and adapted and evolved was art. Like, you can't say no to that. And if anything, if there's ever been more or less kind of like basically, well, I'm trying to figure out the word I want to say. If there's ever been anything that has really represented the times and explained the true story of what happened, it's been the artwork of that time.
100%.
It's almost like a time capsule. So I think as mankind obviously evolves and we keep going forward, we're going to keep getting more indications of that. And obviously, like, people doing things remotely now with like Instagram or social media or YouTube or whatever. Films being shot remotely, films being released with like, they're all based off of just webcams and video cameras, like in remote locations. Like, it's just a sign of the times, and it's going to adapt and evolve forward from there. And people are going to learn from it, and they're going to use it as part of their project or whatever
Absolutely.
they're working on. And I think that's exciting because it forces us to think outside of the box and just become better at what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick, we're gonna do a little fourth wall break. Is this sun shining directly into the window right by you? Because I don't know if you can
Yeah.
see your screen, but it we got like this whole like rainbow, looking looking glare. I don't know if you can tell on your little thing that you can see on the top, but
Is it bad? Is it bad? Can you see me?
It's pretty noticeable. I'd say that. Like, is there any like window that you could like close a curtain on?
Yeah, I can do it. Yeah, give me 1 second.
Appreciate it. I know we're gonna get a couple comments like, "What the hell is going on?" I'm breaking the fourth wall here. We'll fix it in post. Maybe not. We don't know. There we go. That's
that
a lot
better?
better. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
You can tell a big difference. Like, I can just see it slowly getting brighter. I'm like, once he stops, I'm gonna have to mention it because at some point we're not gonna be able to see you anymore. It's just gonna be.
I didn't know it was that bad. My apologies.
Oh no, you're totally fine, man. Like, we're professionals here. It's all good. No problem. But I want to bring it back a little bit to your film real quick. Now that we're back in it, I'd like to talk a little bit about. I want to hear a little bit more about the director. I'm not familiar with him or any of his work. I'm not sure what other projects he's done. Is this his first major project? Has he done some other features, or is this like what were you looking for when it came to finding a director, and what made you land on this guy?
So Matt Zekel is a young up and coming filmmaker in Michigan. He's done short films prior to this, so this is technically his first full length feature. But the reason why I chose him as director and why I trust in him as director was basically due to the fact that he understands kind of on the same wavelength of how story adapts and evolves. He understands emotion and how to portray it in film, and realistically too. And that's one thing that really stood out to me, because in order for this film to hit and to hit the emotional beats that we wanted to hit, you have to be able to portray that emotion, not only in a realistic sense, but in a sense of where the medium of film can correctly show it off, right? So, for example, in this film, and I don't think this is really spoiling too much, but we use a lot of point of views. We use a lot of POV shots in this film, and we use that for good reason. And you don't typically see those a lot in comic book movies. You don't usually see them a lot at all. And to us, the reason why we're using a lot of point of view shots is so we put the audience in a position where they have to look directly into the actor's eyes. Eyes tell a humongous story in every medium, not even just film. When you look into somebody's eyes and you can see what they're thinking and how they're feeling, especially when something is being said to them and you can hear them or you can see them react, it allows you to fall more emotionally invested into that person or into that character. So we use that in this film a lot because we want the audience to understand what these characters are going through. And again, you don't see that a lot in comic book movies, certainly. And that was one thing, that was just one thing that we're using here as part of this film. But Matt understood that. He understood that emotion is a language that is not always verbal. It's also visual and it's physical. And if you know how to convert that into the medium, then you can really create something special here that people will not only just become interested in, but they'll become attached to. And that's what we want with this film. We want this film, and like think about it for a second. Some of your favorite films of all time are the ones that you can talk about with your friends or with people.
Oh, yeah.
Regardless of what the content is, there's always a conversation that happens afterward. Why did the character do this? Why did the character do that? What did this mean? What did that mean? Not in a bad way, but you kind of deep dive into the psyche of the characters in the film, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
So that's what we want to do with this film. We want that conversation to happen. Ultimately, this film is about grief and how grief is handled. It's not about a man getting revenge. It's not about people dying. It's about grief.
Mm-hmm.
It is the theme of grief and how one handles grief and how grief takes form in different ways. And that's what this film is about. And we want to really explore that and really deep dive into what grief is considered.
Okay.
And I think we did that very well. And I'm very excited with the end result, because we're almost at picture lock. We're almost there. So, and I feel so excited to get it out there, because I know a lot of people are going to become very emotionally invested in this film. I know I certainly have, but like with the people that we've screened it to, just to kind of see how everything's playing along, they've all said very similar things.
Yeah.
And it's exciting to see.
That's awesome. I'm very excited to see it, man. I know that that's ever since you introduced it, I knew the background of the film, and just I always love the idea of the fan made films. I know, like with people like Dylan Sides, who's made a bunch of fan made feet. He did The Masks. He's done a few of The Masks. And now he's working, I believe, on like a Jurassic Park. I'm a fan made film.
That's news to me. I haven't heard that.
Oh yeah. Or no, not Jurassic Park. Jumanji. My fault. I'm sorry.
Oh
Dylan.
yeah, I was gonna say like
not Jurassic Park. Jumanji.
Shit.
But still, it looked like it looked like one of the pictures. I think I had like a dinosaur in it. So I'm like, oh, like what? But no,
Yeah.
just like I love the idea of doing that. Because even though yes, you don't necessarily have the rights to to it or anything. It's very, it gives it gives a fan who's got an eye for filmmaking a chance to just kind of make something of their own. And, it doesn't have to be anything. It's just, it's something that's theirs. And real quick, I'm going to have to interrupt again, because that glare is
that glare back again? I thought I saw it.
Big time.
Damn. I thought it was gone, and then I saw it coming back.
It comes back, and then it just slowly starts to appear again.
Am I good now?
Yeah, you're good now. You're good now.
Am I too dark? Am I too dark?
Oh no! Oh no! You're great. Yeah, we can see you just fine. It's no big deal. Trust me. But I like I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the other things they like to do too. It's one of the things I like to do with the show is obviously, when it comes to interviews, when it comes to something that you do all the time, eventually sometimes the questions get a little bit, overrun over like, yeah, I've heard this before, I'll talk about something that's not just about, what necessarily they're brought on for. And one of the big ones is definitely the wrestling stuff. Like that's okay. What got you into that? What led you to the point where you were able to become a professional? And talk a little bit about I guess about your persona and your character that you like to play when it comes to that as well.
Okay, so I got into pro wrestling as a fan when I was like, God, I think it was 97, so I probably would have been like 9 years old at that point.
Wow,
and
okay.
So the first thing I ever remember watching like in pro wrestling was Sting coming down from the rafters and just beating the crap out of like the NWO with like a bat. And I just thought it was like the coolest thing ever. It was basically like a comic book or a cartoon come to life. And I became hooked ever since. So I stayed a fan for a while, and then I always when I was younger, like way younger, when I was like a teenager, I decided I wanted to get into acting and modeling. So I did that, had a bad experience with an agency. got back out, and then I started thinking like, well, I want to be in entertainment. Like it's really, exciting to me, and it's something I feel like I do pretty well. So what can I do? And I realized Power Rangers wasn't a thing, so I couldn't do that.
Oh,
So next best
that's a
option
tough
was
lesson to learn when you're a kid, man.
I know
That's a tough pill to swallow.
sometimes you just gotta swallow that pill. But the next best option was pro wrestling, and I found a promotion locally that I toured with, helped them set up their ring and their equipment and stuff, and I learned a few things on the road. And then I got officially trained a year after that I think it was like a 12-week program in Lincoln Park, Michigan. And that was all she wrote. I became a pro wrestler after that, and I worked a lot locally for the past 12 years. I haven't wrestled in a year just due to COVID, but yeah, so I've been at it for a while.
Okay. What is your character that you like that you kind of bring to the table with your matches? Because every wrestler's got their own, whether it be quotable lines or whether it be in their outfit, like they've got something that's like that hooks the fans to that person specifically.
Right. So I went by the main event, Justin Main.
Okay.
Justin Main the main event. Justin Main is basically a former Hollywood actor who is joining the pro wrestling world because he dominated the California lifestyle, the Hollywood lifestyle, and now he wants to bring it to pro wrestling. He wants to be pro wrestling's biggest star too. So Justin Main is that type of character. He's a very cocky, egotistical. You never want to touch his face. Like that would be one thing I always tell my opponents before the match, like, don't touch my face. You can hit me here. You can hit me here. You can hit me in the stomach. You can hit me anywhere. Just don't touch the face. And if they would hit the face, I'd freak out. I'd basically throw a tantrum. So, it's always fun. I thought it was a really fun character to play for sure. But like, I figured maybe audience wise, I probably enjoyed watching it too.
Okay. What is your favorite match that you personally have ever been a part of? Whether it was you versus someone one-on-one or maybe you in a group, like what is the match that sticks in your mind when you want to tell someone who's never seen you wrestle before?
Oh man. I have so many favorite matches. It's hard for me to choose like one. But the one off the top of my head that sticks out a lot is this match that I had with a guy named Bill Martell back in I think 2000. What was it? 2018? Might have been July 2018. It was for BCWA. It was like their first show back after like a 10-year or no, like a close to a 10-year hiatus. And the crowd, we had I think 300 or 400 people in the crowd. Had a great match. I think it went close to 30 minutes, and people were just out of their seats, screaming, cheering, stuff like that. We had a really dramatic end of the match where people thought it was completely over, and then I kicked out and people just lost their shit. So that always stands out to me. I always enjoyed the matches where people were just really loud and vocal, like the audience. So I think off the top of my head, probably that one.
Okay, awesome. Would you say that fans, like you kind of brought up already, but would you say that fans are probably one of the most important aspects when it comes to a wrestling match? Considering, it is obviously it's meant for entertainment. There's obviously, it's not, I'm not gonna go into the whole, the whole bullshit line of wrestling is fake, because it's not. But
please don't, because my body tells otherwise. My body
right, exactly. I can't, I've seen so many, professional wrestlers who have posted just their injury lists. This looks fake to you, no, it's not fake. That's a mean word to say for when it comes to wrestling. But would you say that fans are one of the most important aspects of really bringing that entertainment to life? Anyone can wrestle their brother, and do a whole, Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Rock impersonation in their living room. But is that what kind of makes it, that sort of just taking that hype from the crowd and being able to put it into that match? Is that really would you agree that that's one of the more important aspects?
For some guys, maybe not, but for me, yeah.
Okay.
I thrive. I think this is where I kind of look at pro wrestling like theater. Like some people have like a ton of theater experience, and I mean they can look at it from that point of view. But I also think of pro wrestling as theater too, where on a stage in front of people, you only get one take. If you fuck up, fuck up. You're just gonna have to keep going with it. The only difference here is that there's a lot more stage combat in pro wrestling. So if I get hurt on stage, you're going to see me get hurt on stage, and now I have to figure that whole situation out. So, so my experience with theater comes from pro wrestling, and one thing that a lot of theater actors will say is that depending on how vocal the crowd is and how large the crowd is, it can sometimes dictate the emotional intensity of their performance. Obviously, you don't want to slack off in front of, like, even if you have like 10 people, you don't want to slack off in front of them.
Oh, sure.
But like if you have 1,000 people in there, there is a certain energy that translates and you feel it, and it puts you into a different mindset emotionally, mentally, all that stuff. No, regardless of how many people are in there. Or regardless of how you perform in front of like little people and whatnot. So for me personally, I thrive off of a crowd. If there's a crowd there, and especially if they're vocal, a lot of my best matches have been with that.
Okay.
I know some guys can wrestle in front of literally no people. They can do it in front of like,
and they'll be the same way as they are in front of 10.
They'll be the same way as they are. And if you can do that, by all means, go ahead. That's cool, man. I wish I could do that too.
Yeah.
I'm personally not that way. That's why, like, whenever I've had matches with like zero crowd, not even like 5 people in the crowd, where I'm talking like zero crowd, just like the wrestlers watching and nobody else, they haven't been some of my favorite matches because it's hard to have that emotional intensity when you have literally zero people there. Maybe I'll get criticized for that, maybe I won't, but like, to me, I think there's a definite distinct difference between the two, and to say that there isn't, I think you're bullshitting personally. But
during your matches, does everything pretty much stay how you're planning on it, or are there more times than maybe people expect where improv is kind of having to be used? Like maybe someone did a wrong move, or like I said, maybe you actually get hurt and now you got to kind of play with that when it comes to the thing. Like how often is improv kind of used during your matches?
It really depends. It depends on every person is different. Every wrestler is different. For me personally, I can kind of go in both directions. I've been raised both ways, so to speak. Some guys need to plan out every little detail of their match. Other guys literally just call everything in the ring, like nothing's planned beforehand. So it just really kind of, I guess, depends on the person. I've noticed a lot of the older generations call a lot in the ring. They very minimal stuff is called behind, like, before the match and whatnot. A lot of the newer guys like to plan everything out, and it just really depends. You can go a lot more stylized for sure if you plan everything out, but if you forget one thing, like, then that's when you have to improvise, and then you have to be good at improvisation. And that's where things can get dangerous too, because you have one person doing one thing, you have another person doing another thing, and if they collide,
someone's getting hurt, or someone's getting hurt. Right. Okay.
So yeah, it really depends, honestly. I can tell you distinctly that I love improvising in a match. I think that's where you're a lot more flexible, a lot more loose. You can have those moments with the crowd more efficiently, because I think if you plan too much out, you start becoming too worried about where you're at in the match and what's coming up next, and you can't keep focused on that moment at that particular time. Right. And sometimes that you can lose the crowd when that happens. So I think it's good to have a healthy ability to be able to mix the two together and create the best match possible.
Okay. I had another question for you. Maybe not. Maybe it was something about something else, actually. Yeah. Okay. So I know we talked a little bit earlier about some of your other acting projects. We really didn't get too much into it. What are some of your, I guess kind of a similar question to wrestling. What are some of your favorite acting roles that you've been able to do as well? Like even if it was a small one, like what's just like, a time where like, man, I was just an extra on this project, but it was the best time I ever had. Like what's a project that that sticks out in your mind with acting wise, besides the one you're currently working on?
So I would say there's been quite a few. I find fun in every single role that I do. I don't think anyone. I don't think there's ever been any one role that I hated or I didn't like. Obviously,
Okay.
I wouldn't do it if I didn't like it, but they all bring something slightly different to the table. And my big thing with acting is that I just love exploring the character's mindset. I love creating a backstory and figuring out, the character arc and playing that character arc through. I just love being in somebody else's shoes. So to me, that's really fun. That's really exciting. It's almost like a meditation for me when I do it. Obviously, I love doing it professionally. It's great to be able to, treat it like a business and to be able to say that I do it for a living. But it's also really nice as just a chance for me to kind of put myself into somebody else's shoes, channel some of my own emotions, some of my own history into these characters, and really just explore that. But with that being said, I would say some of my favorite roles, and this is kind of what hot-shotted me into acting professionally, was an opportunity to work on Jurassic World in 2014 as an extra, and that whole experience changed my life so much. I remember the first day that I walked onto set, I cried like a fucking baby. Like I saw everything around me. Like I'm a huge Jurassic Park fan. I've been a huge Jurassic Park fan since I was 5. It was my childhood dream come true. So to be able to like literally physically be at Jurassic Park,
Yeah.
that was mind blowing to me. I would, oh man, I'm sure I looked real funny, but like I had to like sit down and like weep because I
Yeah.
was that happy. It was one of the happiest moments of my life, and
Was
that
it
was just
you were in? Did it make the film?
yes, you can't see me because there's a whole bunch of people in the scene,
Right.
but yeah, so I was in a couple of different scenes. I was in the main street scenes where you can see the crowd kind of walking around, shopping and all that stuff.
Okay.
In that particular scene, I'm right by the fountain as the camera's flying over the park. Another scene was when the pteranodons were attacking, and you can see me run past a couple of the main actors. So
Jimmy Buffett holding the margaritas.
hey, I didn't know Jimmy Buffett was on set until afterward, though. Like
Oh,
I had heard rumors, but I didn't see him like personally.
the best scene of the whole movie. And the fact that it was
I know,
Jimmy
yeah.
Buffett, I thought it was the best scene before I knew that was Jimmy Buffett. Like, I just like, is that guy just making sure that he has the margarita? Like, hey man, save the margaritas. Like those things are probably like $20 at that damn park too.
The funny thing was, I remember them filming that, but I didn't know that was Jimmy Buffett.
Oh,
I remember seeing that. I remember them like literally filming the guy carrying his margaritas and running away with them. But like, I'm like, that's interesting. That's really funny. I like that. And then come to find out that's fucking Jimmy Buffett. But
such
but yeah,
so damn cool.
no, that was but that whole experience was so great. It was so fun. I have a lot of stories from set. Just a lot of fun little moments, like Chris Pratt being attacked by.
Oh,
I don't know if anybody's ever seen like the behind the scenes for Jurassic World. But I don't even know if they recorded this. But on one of the days that we were
you heard it
shooting,
here first if he didn't.
so on one of the days that we were shooting, in the scene where the pteranodons attack Main Street, there's a particular shot where Chris Pratt gets attacked by one of these pteranodons with like these like really, really sharp teeth. And it's this big dramatic moment, big scary moment, because it's like chomping at his face, trying to get at him. Well, how they shot that, Chris Pratt was physically there. It was physically outside, nothing with the environment. But the only difference was they had I don't know what the correct terminology, so please don't get mad at me, but they had a little person in a green costume, in a green jumpsuit, literally attacking and jumping at Chris Pratt. And Chris Pratt was laughing his ass off. Like he was laughing, like he couldn't get through the scene. He could not stop laughing. And honestly, it was fucking hilarious. Like literally watching like this, just watching this like this little person just like trying to go after him, and
that is great.
it was
Man.
so funny. It was one of my favorite stories from set.
I wonder what they told that guy too. Like, hey man, this is your moment right here. We're gonna need you to attack Chris Pratt like a rabid dog. I got this. This is my moment.
It was amazing. It was really fun to watch.
That is hilarious.
I almost got to do stunts on the film, but the unfortunate thing was at the time I didn't have my SAG card. But I was talking with one of the stunt guys on set, and I told him, I had like 10 years of I think at the time I had like 8, 9 or 10 years or something like that of pro wrestling experience. And I was like, hey, if you guys need any extra stunt guys, like I have pro wrestling experience. I'm used to falling. I have some stunt experience on film. Like I can do this for you. Just let me know. And he's like, okay, I'll talk with the stunt coordinator. And come to find out, the stunt coordinator is one of the biggest in the world. Like Chris, I can't remember his name. I can't remember his name, but I know he worked on like the Avengers. He worked on like a bunch of Marvel movies.
Okay, so he's been around the block.
He's a big, he worked on Transformers. Like he's a big time stunt coordinator. So I got a chance to meet him because the stunt guy hooked me up with like talking with him. It's like, hey, so Chris is right over there if you want to go talk with him. I'm like,
yeah. Sure, I can do that. Yeah, why not?
Anything I should say in particular? He's like, yeah, just tell him what you told me. Just tell him that you're interested in doing stunts, that you have stunt experience. And I was like, okay. So I walked over there full of like confidence, like, I'm fucking nervous. I'm shit myself. I talked with him. I'm like, hey, so I was talking with one of your guys over there. I'd just like to introduce myself. My name is Justin. I'm here doing extra work, but as I was telling him, I have experience doing stunts. I have like 9 years of pro wrestling experience. If you need anyone for anything, like for any small falls, I can do that for you. And he's like, oh, dude, that's great. Yeah, we could totally use you. We're doing the scene coming up where we're gonna have a few of the stunt guys fall. But do you have your stunt or your SAG card, your SAG-AFTRA card? And SAG-AFTRA is a union for actors, if people are unaware. And I did not have it.
Oh, so close.
So I told him, I'm like, no, I don't. And he's like, oh man, I'm sorry, we can't use you unless you're SAG-AFTRA. And
I'm not too familiar exactly now. Obviously I've heard of the union before, as an actor, I've certainly heard of it, but what is the reason for them not being able to use you because you didn't have one? Like what exactly, why
just for safety reasons, in particular for stunt actors. There's certain liability things, especially insurance wise, that need to be addressed on set. And with a union production, Jurassic World obviously is a union production. It had $150 million budget. So they're definitely SAG-AFTRA. Like you want to make sure that anybody who is doing anything above,
of course,
basically above doing like extra work, and even then there are some extras that are SAG-AFTRA. You want to make sure that everybody's taken care of, everybody's safe, everybody is doing their due diligence, all liability reasons and insurance reasons are covered. You want to make sure all of that is taken care of. And that's pretty much why. That's why a lot you typically don't usually see that, especially on sets like that. So I don't blame him. I'm not angry. I'm not mad at him. But it was one of those things where I was like, I'm never going to let this happen again.
Yeah. No, I would have been this
opportunity. I'm going to have my SAG card.
That damn card.
Right. And actually, funny that we mentioned that. Like, I finally got my SAG-AFTRA status this year. So it was definitely a goal. It's definitely been a goal since then. So.
I got to look into that myself. I got to get into some more projects though. I got to get myself acting more. I got to get my headshots redone. Good Lord, my old headshots were from when I was an MPI. So that's 3 years ago. I didn't have I was bald then. So there's that. I got a little more hair on me now. That's why I have to wear all these bandanas all the time. I always ask about the bandanas. That's because the top of my hair goes down to almost the bottom of my neck. And if I don't have a bandana, eventually the hair falls to the sides and I look like Sokka without his man. It doesn't, but in the worst way. Like it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's got to be tied back a little bit or it doesn't look great. But I was bald, 245 plus pounds, had half the tattoos that I have right now. My beard was really bad back then, like patchy, had missing a piece right here and there. I got to get my headshots redone because I'm sure people right now, my agency is probably looking at my headshots going, I don't know if this guy fits any fucking role that we have right now. But no, I will say though, man, a lot of like with some of the stories you've been telling me, you're getting me excited about getting back into acting again too. I got to get myself doing that again. I like doing the crew work that I'm doing for this web series, but I think after this is done, I want to get myself back into doing a couple of small projects again. I miss acting. It's
Hey, do it, man.
you explained it earlier, man. Like it's so much fun to just put on a different outfit, for just a little while. Like some of my favorite roles I've ever played have been the villain characters because they're so different than me. So it's so much more of a challenge. Like I explained, I think before, I played a home invader, but it was a silent film. So I had to be a home invader. I had a mask, and then you could only see my eyes. So I had to literally tell the whole story with just my eyes, no dialogue, no nothing. Like even the girl who I was abducting couldn't obviously she didn't have any lines. That was such a challenge, just trying to portray this evil monster with purely actions and purely your eyes. Like you mentioned before, the eyes are something that is it gives off the most expression. You have to learn to be able to act with your eyes, and that was one of the bigger challenges I had when it came to that. The other one, one of the other villain roles I played, I played a few other ones, but the one that stands out by far the most, especially when I say what it is, was a white supremacist for my thesis project for MPI. And a little backstory, wasn't a role that I thought was going to be available. Basically what they do is we had three and four, so we had like 10 or 11 people in the acting class by the time it got to the thesis portion. A couple people had dropped out here and there. We had like 10 or 11 people. It was split up into 3 short films. We had 3 directors who had graduated from the school before, who were going to make their own short film, and we were just basically just supposed to give a monologue that they then recorded, and they then put us based on our look and that one monologue that we all had the same one, and they would put us into a role. So so obviously they had to write roles that fit all the genders and stuff like that, the age groups. But other than that, we had no idea what these stories were going to be about, who was actually going to be directing, and and all that. So when it came down to getting the roles, I showed up to school a little bit late. At the time I was living in Flint, and it took me a little bit to get there. And when I got there, everyone had already gotten their roles, and they were all looking at me. And I'm like, why the hell is everyone looking at me? Like, all right, EJ, just want to let you know, you're going to be playing Ralph. I'm like, okay, who's Ralph? And I'm looking through the script, and I'm seeing some of the dialogue that this guy has. And I'm like, who is this guy? And they start, like, well, he's, kind of a white supremacist Nazi kind of guy. And I remember at first feeling kind of offended because I'm like, wait, we didn't audition for these, so it wasn't like I chose for this role. So based on my look
So you just got handed the role.
and my attitude, they thought the best place for me was in the white supremacist role. And so in my head, I'm like,
saying I look like a white supremacist?
well, that's what I was thinking. Like, do I need to change something? Like, is there something that I'm doing that I'm?
I don't know if I would take that as a compliment.
Like, I wasn't sure. I called my dad. I'm like, I don't know about this one. Like, this is like, I'm just, it's so unlike me. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull it off. And he's like, hey, think about this. When you watch a movie and the bad guy is one of the best parts about it, people love someone to hate. Like, and he told me, he goes, think about The Dark Knight. And everyone, first thing you think about when you think of Dark Knight, besides maybe Batman, is Heath Ledger's portrayal of Joker, and just how beloved, despite how evil it was. Even when you look at the most recent Joker, like you can look at, like people like like having someone to I'm trying to think.
But think about that for a second. So you brought up 2 villains that are universally, even though they're considered villains, they're universally
they're loved,
liked.
of course.
They're loved. Why are they loved?
I would, if I had to put my own opinion on it, I would say, that's a good point. Honestly, I would, if I had to, if I had to give my own opinion on why Joker is loved, maybe it's because, he's someone who he kind of goes by his own sales. He kind of, he kind of sails by his own kind of, he kind of does his own, he has his own version of the world that he's not afraid to obviously show in many ways, whether violent or not, to show his true side. He's not afraid to show what he believes in. He's not afraid to be really anyone that he wants to be, despite whatever version you love the most.
Right.
They all have a similar, they all have very similar qualities between one another because it's still the character. Obviously, different versions can do or say different things, have different attitudes, but they all have a very similar motivation in being alive and being around and in being who they are. That's what I would say.
So with that being said, could you understand where he was coming from and why he was doing what he was doing?
Maybe not the way you're thinking of right now. What are you thinking exactly?
So I think the reason why they are considered some of the best portrayals of Joker, and if you want to look at like villains and of some of the best villains of all time, like Darth Vader, for example, they're not your classic villains. They're still people. In a relative sense.
They're not. They're not unrealistic.
They're not evil.
Yeah.
They're not evil. They don't do evil things. They believe so much in their own plight based off of their own experiences that what they're doing, even though what they're doing is bad, they don't believe it. They don't believe it's bad. They believe it's the right thing to do based off of what they've been through. It's almost like a form of motivation or I don't want to say revenge, but we've all been in that position where maybe we don't make some of the best decisions, but because of what we've been through in our past, it's our response to it. And sure. I think that's why there's some of the best just characters of all time, even though they're bad. It's because of that reason. We can understand where they're coming from. Yeah. The Joker, Heath Ledger's Joker had a bad upbringing. Whatever story you want to believe about how he got his scars.
There was some sympathy put into his backstory of like, his dad was, kind of a, rough around the edges, you could say. You
have sympathy for him. I think that's a very important thing. Sympathy and empathy are two very strong feelings for people to really understand and relate to a character. Same thing with Joaquin Phoenix's Joker.
Oh yeah.
Very relatable
and empathy with that, and that freaked people out. Like we talked, like me and Melissa talked about that on an earlier episode. Like people were almost they were almost afraid to be sympathetic with him, so they made this movie into like, oh, it's promoting all this violence and all this. Like, have you seen John Wick? Like, have you seen any other movie ever? Like, this guy shot a few people. Like, this is not even that big of a deal, but there was so much empathy and sympathy with it. People were almost afraid to root for this guy.
But here's the thing, it makes you think about how you respond to things in your own life. If you can understand where this guy is coming from and why he's making that decision, that makes you start thinking in your head like, oh my God, am I capable of doing this? Would I do something like this? Even though he's doing something bad, but like I
like his motivations. It makes sense.
I kind of like his motivations make sense to me. Like, I love that about character work, and that is some of the most brilliant character work ever. Darth Vader, same thing. He didn't have Thanos. Steppenwolf recently in Justice League.
Oh yeah,
valid motivators, and those are some of the best villains of all time, and those are rich characters. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, is what stands out amongst anything else when it comes to character work. You can't just have somebody be bad. Like they may make bad decisions, but they're not always bad people. They certainly weren't raised to be bad, right?
Yeah.
There's no kid that is born bad. They're just raised, and they're basically forming their life around what they experienced.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as good and evil to me. There's always just good and bad decisions. And bringing it back to Crow, for example, like that's why we're doing what we're doing in that. I hate stereotypical archetypal villains. Like, it's boring, it's overdone, it's
I'm gonna tell you my whole
nobody
plan before I kill you.
nobody like it's just it's been yeah, it's just it's there's nothing to hold on to. You watch it and it's like it doesn't stay with you. You just kind of forget about it. And to me, like, death is a big thing. You know, death should sit with you. It should
Yeah.
make you think and process, right?
Some people people process it differently, and I think expressing
Right.
that with these different villains, and like, hey, some people take the dark moments in their life and are able to turn it into a positive, and they're able to do great things. Some people don't.
Right. And
Not everybody takes it the same way.
and I personally find that fascinating. And I know the Matt Zekel and a few for the others on the film for Crow, we think in a very similar manner, and that's a topic that we explore very thoroughly in this film.
Oh,
So
glad I brought it up then. I totally knew
yeah,
that.
yeah.
By
So
the way.
as soon as
Totally
you
knew
brought it
that.
up, I'm like, it went ding, ding, ding in my head. Like,
Like, hey,
I just,
totally knew
I
that, by
just
the way. I
personally,
can read your mind. That's all. That's all it was.
well, that's personally why I love acting so much and why I love filmmaking, is because if you do it right, you can make people think, you can make people
Yeah.
change, you can make people understand, even if they weren't raised to be that way. You can really change their thought process and just show them a whole new world that they never understood or experienced. But if you do it the right way, you can literally change somebody's life.
Yeah.
And I think
And
that's very important.
And I think that was something that I tried to bring a little bit into that role, obviously in a different way. I'm not saying I want people to realize, oh, maybe racism is okay. That's not what I'm saying. Let me be clear before I get canceled. But I'm not even big yet. I'm gonna get canceled before I even get there. It was more of, like I kind of had to take on the persona of, because I wasn't able to just hate one group of people. I basically just kind of turn him into this character where he just hated everybody. It didn't matter what you were, who you were, what you did. I had a problem with you. Like, that was how I looked at everybody that I was around, because it was all in this diner. There wasn't like a lot of maneuvering. Like, I sat in this diner seat for the entire short film. The entire story to kind of kind of gives my character a little bit of an arc. Is I'm walking in this diner. There's police lights and car crashes and screaming behind me. I was basically at a civil rights rally, obviously on the wrong side of the civil rights rally, and I sit down at a table, kind of confused about where I am. A black woman comes in, someone from my class. She is also from the same rally. We realize that kind of further into the story. We kind of realize, oh, like, okay, we came from the same place. Wait, how did you get here? And we both realized that we were both killed at this rally, and this diner was basically purgatory. And
I like that. That's a great story.
We were forced to sit at this table and forced to communicate. Like, all the tables are filled. So there was like, she, when she walked in, she goes, is there any way I can sit? I'll just stand. No, you can't stand because there's fire codes. You have to sit down. You can't stand in the aisle way. Like, just all this little stuff that like forced us to come and realize, oh, we're not really that different. Like, the same cause, the same hatred is what got us here, and so, and then by the end, we share a piece of pie together, and it just, it's all happy, I guess happy, we're dead, but but it was, and there wasn't anything where I was just like blatantly, like, it wasn't American history X, level racism or anything, but it was, it was still a student film after all. In my school, it had to be, they had to put their name on it. But it was such a different, just kind of attitude to getting into that mindset of having to just hating everything for really one sole reason. It is, it's kind of like you said, like, you almost, you have to play it in a way where, yeah, obviously the motivations are bad, but, like, the motivations behind why this guy may have thought what he did, there's a lot of, there's a lot of things that I think can be explored with a character like that. Yes, not saying that being racist is good, but depending on what led him to that, there might be a bit of, like you said, like a bit of like, do I feel sympathy for this guy? Like, am I feeling like I don't really shit? Like, and that was what I had tried to bring into it. And my stepdad, the guy, convinced me to, hey, just take it and nail it. Like, just, because for one thing, it's going to be a heck of a story one day. And for another thing, you're always going to remember this role that you did. You're not going to remember more than likely, you won't remember the bartender role that you got, but you're going to remember the time where you had to play, this insanely difficult character to hit. And by the end of the film, when he watched it at the graduation, he came out and said, "I didn't even know that was you." And that was all I needed to hear. That was all the accreditation that I needed from him to basically be like, "Hey, I didn't know that was you. I didn't recognize you in that." And I'm not sure if you gotten this either, but when it comes to family and and friends, people who are with you and around you, who know who you are as a person, those can be the toughest critics and the toughest people to convince that you're acting, because they'll be like, see, you say that in real life though, or oh no, those can be the easiest people to impress, or they can be the toughest people. My stepdad is one of those just really tough people that when he gives a comment like that, you better hold on to that comment for the rest of your life, because you may not get that one again. And I love him. I'm not saying he's a bad person, but I just it's just kind of how he is.
He doesn't just hand things out. You have to earn
exactly. But how much time are we running out here? We're probably going a little over an hour. Oh yeah, we got an hour, 18 minutes into this bitch. Right? Yep. I told you before the show started, it's always an hour, and it never is an hour. But we'll wrap it up right here. Hey man, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on again. And hopefully someday when things get a little bit better, schedules get a little bit easier. We'd love to have you back on and talk a little bit.
For sure. I'm totally down.
I know you got your film coming out. I know you see you don't have exact date, but hopefully within the next 4, 5, 6 months it'll be officially released.
It'll be out this year for sure.
That's all.
We're hoping by the tail end of the summer is
awesome.
the goal. We'll know in the next couple of weeks, and then we'll make an announcement.
Well, as soon as it's released, we'll share it on all platforms that we have. We'll give you a shout out. We'll let people know, hey, if you saw this episode, that film is officially out. Then we'll try to bring it back on to get a little bit of your input about, hey, how has release been for you now? We got to hear a little bit about everything else. How's the release been? So, but but with that, guys, you guys know the deal. Like, subscribe, follow, share, whatever suits your fancy of how you want to get this show to come out. We appreciate any and all the support. And we will see you guys in just a couple of weeks. Thanks again, man.